All right, everyone. So we have Jackie Rosario. She is running for District 2 seat on the Indian River County School Board. How are you, Jackie?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. If you want to just give us maybe a little minute or so, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, my name is Jackie Rosario, as you just mentioned. I am a woman of faith, a mom, a teacher, a school administrator, and your current school board member for District 2 here in Indian River County. I began my teaching career in 1992 as a teacher of English as a second language. And then several years later, I became an assistant principal at an alternative high school in Brooklyn. Then about 14 years ago, almost 14 years ago, I relocated here to Vero Beach, of which I had, have continued on the same career path. Then probably about 8 years ago, through different things that happened in my life and my family life, we prayerfully considered homeschooling my son, who is now 14 years old. At the time, he was in first grade. And that's exactly what we did. We began homeschooling him, and I've been homeschooling him ever since. It's been a great opportunity for us. It really was the right move for our family and for our son. But I understand that not everyone has that opportunity. Homeschooling is a walk of faith. And if you're not quite sure exactly how to do that while you are working full time or you have other obligations, it's pretty difficult. Even if there are parents who wish they could do it, it's very difficult, which is why I am such an advocate on the school board for school choice. I think it's very important that we make sure to give options, because not every child learns the same way. Not every child is college bound. Everyone has different gifts and different abilities. And I think it's important that the school district represent the different lives that we are servicing, the different children that we're servicing. So for that, I would be the only school board member who really champions school choice and parental rights. I live it. I am in it day in and day out. And for that matter, I am a staunch advocate for the things that parents and guardians desire, really, which is, including their medical freedom. It's the ability to choose the best educational environment for their child. With that said, I guess I will just say that I have a bachelor's degree in social science, English as a second language, a master's in special education with a concentration in deaf ed, a master's in school supervision administration, and a master's in divinity.
Jeez. Wow.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, same.
Some would say you're more qualified than Mr. Barefoot.
That guy likes to pat himself on the back. We all read that article right before we shot this podcast, and we all got a kick out of it, just to say the least. So yeah, you kind of
sorry about that, guys.
No, we actually appreciate it. We're pot stirrers, if you will, as well. So we definitely appreciate it. So yeah, you kind of nailed one of our first questions about school choice, which we, as kind of a libertarian, liberty-minded kind of podcast, we're super big fans of that. How exactly do you see that properly being implemented? Is it some sort of voucher system, or do you have other ideas in regards to that?
No, well, we have, there are lots of different ways to provide school choice. I'll tell you, when I started on the school board in 2018, we had a school choice available somewhat. It's a legal obligation for the school district to provide it, but it really wasn't a real choice, because parents had to drive their child to the school of their choice. So if a parent, for example, wanted to send their child to a school outside of their zoned area, they had to be responsible for the transportation. But if you're a working parent and you have other children, you might not be able to do that, which means you're still locked into your local school district or your local school, your zoned school. Mm-hmm. And I worked really hard when I became a board member to ensure that we provide transportation. And thankfully now we do. Not only that, but every single school in our district has created a theme so that they kind of compete with one another, not in terrible ways, but competition is always good.
Right.
But every school now has their own theme or their own attractor program, so to say. So one school might focus in on the performing arts. Another one might be environmental studies. Another one might be STEM related, science, technology, engineering, and math. And the idea is for the parent to kind of look at all the schools that we have in the district and say, I really want my child to be in the performing arts school. And the parent can apply through the district to put their child in this school, doesn't matter where it is in the district, in the county, and have transportation provided for them. So now it really is school choice. So that's one of the visions that I had. But we also have an opportunity to get kids enrolled in dual enrollment programs and in the high school programs that are vocational and training related. So vocational and what's that word I'm thinking of?
Like trades?
Yeah, it's in the trades. It was another word that, of course, escapes me right now. But yeah, and they get certification in an area that they are specifically studying, so that when they graduate with a high school diploma and with some kind of certification in auto mechanics or aviation or welding or any such program that we might have, offered. Again, not everyone is college bound, and so why not offer options for kids? We have these options available. We just got to get the kids in the programs.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Bookie.
Yeah, sorry. I actually have hopefully a quick question about this, only because it's been a while since I've been in high school. But when I did, it was that charter. So dual enrollment was very easy because it was a quick walk across a forest, or literally a little woods, to get to our classes. But now, is this vocational and like trades part new? Is that what you were stating, correct?
No, it's not new.
Okay, so
we have different programs that are offered at the high schools, at each of our high schools. The charter school functions different than the other high schools that we have. Because the charter, you're right, is right on the same campus as Indian River State College, and so it's easier for you all to walk there and do dual enrollment there.
That's correct.
But we have several options. So each high school here offers their own course-related, vocational training. So it might be marketing. It might be auto mechanics in Sebastian River, for example, Sebastian River High School. There's another program for aviation, which is a dual enrollment program with a college with, what is the name of that college? I don't know why I'm skipping. My mind is skipping.
It's fine. This is the podcast of Escaping Worlds.
So the kids actually do dual enrollment there.
Okay.
So then they can graduate with a with a high school diploma and a college certification in avionics or drone related.
Oh, that's awesome.
Interesting.
Obviously, you can tell I'm not in the high school. That's not where I am.
This is great, though. We're happy to have you advocating for this sort of stuff.
At Vero Beach High School, there are similar programs. Culinary arts is one of them. I believe that we are offering hospitality there. We also have locally Treasure Coast Technical College. I don't know if anybody really knows that.
That's the first I'm hearing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, Treasure Coast Technical College is an actual college for adults located in Gifford, and it is part of the school district of Indian River County. And they offer for high school students dual enrollment program in CNA, which is Certified Nursing Assistant. We are expanding the program to surgical technology. We are also going to offer soon early childhood certification. Welding program is there as well. There used to be HVAC, which is the air conditioning and heating. Not sure if it's still there, but these are the kinds of programs that are currently available. In my opinion, they're just not full enough. And I think we have plenty of students that we can do better at recruiting students to get them into some of these programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, because I actually have heard of the school you're talking about in Gifford. I had a previous girlfriend. She got her medical assistant license or certificate there. But yeah, I definitely don't think it's something that's promoted enough in the county. And hopefully that's something that you can spearhead. So yeah, moving on to the next one. With school boards being criticized for becoming hyper-politicized, do you feel that these cultural hot topics, specifically speaking the LGBTQ education and critical race theory, things like this, do you think that they have any effect on children's education? Like in other words, in that article we read in the Vero News that we kind of already talked about, Barefoot likes to make it seem like you guys politicize this thing. Long-winded question, but do you see any of this having effect on, the child's education?
Well, I'll tell you, within the last year, I could probably talk about this for 4 hours. Within the last year, I have, and I've been on the board for 3.5 years, right? So only within the last year have I really seen every single thing that is a hot topic show up within the last year.
Right.
It started somewhere around February or March when I noticed that there was a professional development that the district was creating called Courageous Conversations. The professional development was just unrolling to the administrators. The intent was eventually to unveil it to teachers. It didn't quite get that far. When I became aware of it, there was something about it. There were these keywords that were popping up that were really, my antennas were going up. So I inquired to see the entire first module, which was at the time the only module created. And I was really, really disappointed because the professional development, based on this book, again, Courageous Conversations, was pitting one race against the other. It was all about black versus white or white against black, the entire thing. And midway through, there were questions, a question in particular that said, and I'm totally paraphrasing, if you want to have better relations with coworkers and other people in your life, you need to define your whiteness.
Oh.
And so, exactly. And so I was incredibly offended. And then I wondered, what does that mean? So I sat in front of the superintendent and I asked him, can you define your whiteness?
Put him on the spot. I like the move.
Well, yeah, I had to have my own courageous conversation with him, right?
And these are the moments we watch the school board meetings for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you watch them?
We watched the ones during the mask mandate debates. We watched a couple of those.
Yeah, big fans.
I would be like at work, just listening to it in the background, just thinking how glad I was not to be there.
Yeah. It's pretty challenging.
Yeah, but yeah.
So, long story short, he couldn't define his whiteness. Everyone that I asked at the time couldn't define it. I then wanted to know in that conversation, where do I fit in this? Because I am of Puerto Rican descent, American of Puerto Rican descent, and even though my skin is white, my skin color is white, I still didn't know where I fit in this. I wanted to know if I was supposed to be racist or not. And I just couldn't find that out. I also wanted to know, how is this professional development supposed to better a teacher's craft? Because that's the intent of professional development, is to develop you professionally. And I just couldn't see where this was going to have an impact on teachers or on student achievement. So it took a long time to really, quite a while, to show the superintendent how divisive this was. but at the end he recognized and pulled it.
Nice.
So when you ask, are these things in the schools, or do I see it in the schools, or do they affect children? I have been at the forefront of stopping these things before they actually do affect the kids.
I feel like
critical race theory was one, the mask mandate was another. Sexually explicit books were just in the middle of that, so that's a whole other topic in and of itself.
No, what I was thinking is one of the arguments against you kind of going against these things is that they're not really happening in our kind of small town. Like, you're being overzealous. But hearing like your side of the story, it seems like they kind of are trying to happen, but you're actively trying to stop them. But it's an interesting argument, because it's like, well, if you did your job well, then they aren't happening. but they're kind of looking at it like, well, we're mostly conservative, little town. This is the kind of stuff that's happening in far left California towns.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Cameron, because I think even initially when we did our original school board episode, I think we were kind of all under the impression that a lot of this was kind of political posturing, because we like Bookie said earlier, it's been a while since we've been in school. So we kind of looked at it as like, hey, is this really happening, or is this like, a way for some of these people to kind of just drum up their base? But I mean, as you just pointed out, it's actively trying to happen, and you guys are doing a good job of keeping it out of the schools.
Yeah, I'm trying. Oftentimes I feel like I'm the lone ranger. I'm the only one in the fight. And then board members seem to want to fight against me, when ultimately it's like, look, I know that this stuff is wrong. It's just wrong. It's very divisive. It doesn't have a place in our schools. And not to mention, they're not standards-based. We have standards that the Department of Education has approved. And so all of our curriculum and all of our supplemental material needs to be aligned with our standards. If our standards do not include critical race theory, or any theory, therefore, that is not scientifically based or supported by the standards, then don't have them. We don't need them. We don't need them in our schools.
Yep, and they did mention, in the article we read about how you and your following are supposedly a fringe minority, but it's just funny how when these issues come up, all of a sudden a ton of parents show up and they're very upset about it.
Yeah.
How often do parents show up about other issues? I'm sure it's not like a packed room like it was for these hot debates you guys had typically.
Yeah, this fringe group seems to have the ear of our governor.
Yeah.
This fringe group is the group that brought the attention of all of the library books that are currently sitting on our shelves that are pornographic and have sexual content. This supposed fringe group was really at the front lines of ensuring that curriculum during the adoption process did not contain divisive material. They really have been holding our feet to the fire with the mask mandates. And every single one of those issues have had to be addressed by the school district, by the board members, and ultimately followed up with an executive order or some type of DOE rule that said, do not do this.
Right.
The very thing that they were fighting against, these rules said, do not do. And so I don't think that's a fringe group as far as I'm concerned. I think that this group is a group of parents, moms and dads and grandparents alike, and community members who are saying no more. When COVID hit and all the children were in front of a computer screen, the veils were removed from what the students were kind of brought apart so that the parents can see what the students were learning. And I think that's really the first eye-opening experience into the classroom and into the students' world, that parents said, this is wrong.
Right.
This is wrong. We can't have this.
Yeah, that was pretty disturbing when we saw like representatives from like the National Teachers Union and things like that complaining about this, about the fact that parents were looking at what their children were learning. It was a bit eye-opening.
Yeah, it's pretty concerning that you would be worried. I mean, everything is supposed to be in the open, transparent. We're not hiding anything, so I don't understand what the issue is.
Yep.
So
I really don't.
And this kind of is just a question for me. I don't have any kids, but I get that obviously maybe a good thing from COVID was, like you just stated, parents were able to see what their kids were looking at, firsthand because of them being home and on their screens. But is this something that we should? And I said we, as just like a general, we kind of push more for parents if they have the time or if they're able to kind of be more involved with what their kids are currently doing with school, or are there other pathways besides asking the kid, which is going to say it's fine or just normal for parents to see what's going on with their kids learning besides watching a 3-hour school board meeting? Yeah.
Board meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we now have. I mean, every parent is different, right?
Of course.
There are some parents who say, "I'm bringing my child to school and let the school decide what to do with my child from 9 to 3."
Yeah, and those parents
and then you have
aren't going
other
to
parents who say, "No, I want to know every single little thing." So on this whole spectrum of what a parent wants, it's really incumbent upon the school district, the school, and the school district to ensure that we have policies in place for each parent, because our number one client are children, and we service their parents, right? Their parents and their guardians, their families. And so, as I mentioned before, even our legislatures have heard from their constituents and have passed laws, the Parents' Bill of Rights, which was last year, and the Parents' Bill of Rights in Education this year, both of which the governor signed. That both of them give the parents the fundamental right to make the decision on their children's upbringing, educational setting, medical rights, medical freedoms, and everything in between. And that would also include curriculum. So there's a law that has to be, we're actually in the process of creating policy now to ensure that parents will be able to view the curriculum that's being taught, know what, if they want, know what is being provided for their children in terms of, the content, looking at the textbooks, being able to look at chapter 1 and saying, and also have the opportunity to object to chapter 1. That's as an example. And if you don't have any objections, then great. But we have to now create a policy that says this is the objection process. And if you have a complaint, this is how it should be handled. The biggest thing for me is looking at what the legislatures did not include in the bill. And those are the things that we have to pay attention to at the local level. So if the legislatures say, create a policy that gives parents the opportunity to object to something being taught in the classroom, my concern, therefore, then is, well, then what? So a parent complains and says, I don't want my child to read. I'll tell you an example that we faced. At the beginning of last school year, there was a parent of I'm going to say second or third grader, who did not appreciate one chapter that was being taught on the Asian culture and mummies. I think it was, the ritual of mummies or Buddhism. That's what it was.
Okay.
It was on Buddhism. And there was something about, teach your child or, reiterate what we're learning in this chapter. It was kind of like very generic. What would usually go home with a chapter study. But the parent was devoutly Catholic. and the parent complained about it and didn't get anywhere with the principal. The parent wound up emailing me, which I then took it to our assistant superintendent of curriculum and instruction and said, hey, this has to be addressed. There was a back and forth for a little while about, well, we're just going to explain to the parent that this is what it is. And I'm saying, no, that's not right. And this is what I'm talking about with the legislatures, that they didn't include this in, and it's important that at the local level we see this. It's not our job to convince you otherwise of what your objection is. It's our job to say, thank you for your objection. Here's an alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what we weren't doing. And that's what the legislatures didn't include, but the local level needs to make sure that in our policy, we add that in. If a parent has an objection, we have to provide an alternative with no consequences to the child. Because you can still give the same skill, teach the same skill with a different reading assignment or whatever it might be.
Right.
And that's the part that we've got to capture and make sure we get right.
Right. It's kind of a part of like the delegation of powers where, the state's going to tell you to do one thing, but they're not going to walk you through it. You guys need to figure that out here. And
exactly.
So it's, it's great to have people who are willing to do those things, to do the legwork to figure those things out and not just kind of take things at face value.
This is why it's so important to know who you are voting for, because if you're just going to have a rubber stamper, then you're going to have board members who are not going to pay attention to the fine details. Mm-hmm. But if you have someone who's willing to do the work and willing to pay attention to all these little details, then real change can happen.
Mm-hmm. So one immediate, when you explained, that particular case where you guys dealt with the, the Catholic and the Buddhism, my immediate thought was an argument that I could see the left coming up with, and that, it's the state protecting Christians, and if it was the other way around, if it was a Muslim saying the same thing, that, it would be completely ignored. Do you have maybe a response and, maybe an assurance that this would be implemented fairly?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's supposed to be implemented for all parents equally, the same way.
Right.
And that's exactly what came up in this conversation with the area superintendent, who, by the way, is no longer with us. But at the time, I said the same thing because we kept going back and forth on this issue. And I said exactly that. What if this person was a Muslim? What if this person was anything other than Catholic? Mm-hmm. Would we still try to convince them, that this is what it is? Mm-hmm, no. Right. And he actually, there was like one of those, eye-opening kind of, shrugging of the shoulders movement where you go, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you could see the gears turning.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I am a little biased.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll move on to the next ones because we don't want to keep you all night. We have two more for you. So as school shootings have become more prevalent in society as of recently, what ideas or strategies do you have to become more prepared with respect to just the school's response? Maybe even I know this is a school board issue, but maybe even what you would like to see at the the police kind of point of view. How do you see that? What ideas do you have, I guess, is what I'm babbling.
Yeah. Well, we have, the unfortunate thing that came out of the Parkland shooting down south some years ago was a law that states every school in Florida should have one of two things. One, you should either have school resource deputies in every school, or two, you should have the Guardian program implemented. The Guardian program is the one where school district or school building employees, could be teachers, could be any administrators, a select group would be specially trained to be able to have a license to carry a weapon in the school building from 9 to 3, whatever the beginning of the day is, and up until the end of the school day. The caveat to the Guardian program is that it's really not up to the school district to make that decision. It's really up to the sheriff's office. If you read the law states that it is the sheriff's office that has to provide the training for the Guardian program, because these people would be called, and I don't know, then it's like a pseudo police officer.
Right.
It's like your temporary police,
like an honorary deputy
time
or something.
to that time. And then after the school day ends, that weapon has to be locked up. I don't know where, but locked up and until the next day. Then once you get on campus, then you are this pseudo police officer from this time to that time. And our previous sheriff was not willing to move forward with that program, and neither is our current sheriff. So we are only left with the only option, which is to have school resource deputies in every school. And we do have that. We have very highly trained and really dedicated police officers on every single campus. Our high schools have more than one because obviously they're really, really large.
Right.
And they practice, their drills, their code red, their code yellow drills regularly. We have had unfortunate instances, and within seconds, police are there. Not like what happened in Uvalde, Texas, unfortunately, that it took quite a while before police officers came to the scene, and I have every confidence that wouldn't happen here.
Right.
We also have worked really hard to ensure that we have single access entries at every single one of our campuses. So you can only get in one way. In many of the single entries, there are double entries. So you have to buzz from the outside, buzz from the inside, and then you have to walk through to get to the main office or the secretary.
Right.
And it's one person at a time. It's not like multiple people can go in at one time. Our campuses have gates, and it's unfortunate to say that nothing is foolproof, 100% foolproof.
Yeah.
But I do have every confidence that what we have in place is it's going to keep our kids safe.
Okay. So you're relatively happy with where we're at now as a county?
I'm definitely comfortable with where we are as a county. We have great working relationships with all of our local law enforcement agencies. They even communicate with each other, even if, from Fellsmere to Sebastian to Vero Beach PD and the sheriff's office, everyone with regard to our schools are all on the same page. We have regular safety meetings that I can't divulge. Some of the things that we talk about in private, obviously, for safety reasons. But I have every confidence that we are on the right track.
Out of curiosity, would you be open to that Guardian program that you talked about being expanded to give maybe the school boards or some responsible authority more leeway? Where they don't have to go through the sheriff's office and they kind of decide who's responsible for this type of thing?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I am in favor of. I am in favor of talking about having additional security. Mm-hmm. So we have some retired police officers and we have some retired military that have come up to me since Uvalde, even before then. And I've said, how come, we don't have security? Not police officers and not guardians, but independent security on our campuses that have, a license to carry and who are willing to go. I might even be interested in having that conversation.
Right.
I am a Second Amendment, pro Second Amendment person. I don't know all the ins and outs and the details of what it would look like to be in a full guardian program.
Right.
Some districts are doing that, and I haven't done the full research on that because it's not an option for us right now. So,
Right.
I think I would rather reserve an opinion on it until I get all of the details first.
Fair enough.
No, understood. That's a good answer.
Yeah. It's very unheard of for someone to not give an opinion on something that they're not really sure about.
Yeah.
In today's, everyone has an opinion on everything, despite maybe
it's
not
comforting.
being educated on it. So yeah, here's our last one to close things up, because we're a libertarian, liberty-minded kind of podcast. We have to throw a little anti-government or decentralization question in to give you a little curveball. But given the last 2 years with people recognizing the importance of local government with respect to the impact it has on their day-to-day life, do you think decentralization of the education system would result in a net positive? Tough one.
Well,
and if the question's not clear, I guess I could expand on it a little bit, but
it's clear, no government, limited government, right? That's where you're headed.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, it's more
something
of
like that.
we have more in the sense of the decentralization part, where if there was more freedom for schools to be more free with what they do and have more schools within our county, would that fix some of the issues that we currently have?
The other aspect to this, I think, is that a lot of these super controversial topics that are coming up and are being decided on kind of at state levels and even at county levels. Obviously, not everyone's going to agree on these things, and so this is kind of where school choice comes in, and where a lot of this tension can kind of just be fizzled out because people have the opportunity to go somewhere where they feel comfortable that their children are going to learn their specific values, or
So I as I mentioned before, I'm a homeschooler, right? I homeschool my son, even though I've been in public education my entire adult life. I have the unique perspective of having one foot in one door and one foot in the other door, right? So I can advocate for both. This is where school choice comes into place. I can advocate for public school and for homeschool or any other school of your choice. That said, I will tell you that it has been an incredible burden for my family because we pay local taxes. We pay I pay property taxes on my home, right? I pay taxes for our local school, even though my child doesn't attend the public school. I also don't get a voucher program.
Right.
So I would be incredibly in favor of the money following the child.
Right.
Arizona just did that. Arizona just passed a law. The governor of Arizona just passed a law that said, that states wherever the child is, the money will follow the child. So that could be in micro schools, that is apart from the public school system. The micro schools are small little school pods, I suppose you can call them, very small schools that are popping up in even in the homeschool community, similar to homeschooling co-ops. But they are independent. Some of them can be independent, privately owned, and even some public schools are starting to open up some micropods.
Okay.
But with that said, I think that with limited government or having some of these options where the money will follow the child, it creates an environment of competition. And competition is good. It might actually boost the schools, the public school system, to say, hey, we need to do better, because all these other private schools, magnet schools, charter schools, they're all outperforming the traditional public school. Even homeschoolers are outperforming traditional public school. So why is that?
Yeah.
Why is that? They are doing something differently that the public schools are not doing. In my opinion, public schools are way too big, way too grandiose to kind of put everyone in the same box.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is going on, because we're not differentiating instruction enough. So I would be a proponent of any change just so that the students can succeed, have an opportunity to succeed. And I mean all students.
Right.
Yeah. I think what you just said about, putting the all the students in the same box is such a great point, because it's, I came from where I went to public school in New York State, and there, we don't have a choice. It's public school or you have to pay, twice as much to go to private school, or, whatever you want to do, like you do. So then it's not a very effective system. It doesn't bring the best out of the students. It just kind of makes them all like, Renaissance men that are knowledgeable in everything but not really good at anything. And so I think it's important what you were talking about earlier, allowing these kids to early on take the track that they think they are interested in and just become good at something. Because too many kids are coming out of college, or coming out of high school rather, with no idea what they want to do, and they're not really good at anything because they just haven't had the opportunity to just explore what they're good at. So yeah, I think those programs are really important.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember in junior high school, I mean, I'm aging myself, but I remember in junior high school, I had a shop class.
Nice.
I don't know how old you gentlemen are, but I am over 50. So I remember having a shop class, and in the shop class, everyone, boys and girls, we all learned how to cut wood, hammer,
right,
use a nail, a nail gun, like all of these that build things. We used our hands, not computers, but we used our hands to build things. And we had a typing class.
Yeah, I had one of those in high school or middle school. Yeah, that's such a good point, though, because I think, that's, as you've already stated, that's such a failure on the public education level, where they're not exploring these kids' like strengths, and if a student has a weakness, it's like, well, you just need to get better at it, and it's not like, well, what are your strengths? Maybe okay, maybe you're not great at math, but you're great at this, or you're whatever it ends up being. And just to kind of add to Chris's point, these kids come out of school with a very elementary level understanding of a lot of things, and have no real like, they're not extremely good at one thing. So like, me and Chris were engineers, so like, reading and writing is not really one of the biggest like strengths of ours, or something we use on a day to day. So, and it took me a while to get there. Chris was, Chris is smarter than I. He got there quicker, but had I known I was like good at that kind of stuff from an early age, maybe I would have finished way earlier, and So
everyone's gift is different. We have to get out of the mindset that during curriculum. I mean, I know I'm probably going over my time here. I told you, gentlemen, I could talk for hours on these topics.
You're good.
So just stop me whenever. But
no, it was all about you. So we didn't want to overburden you. So you're fine.
Oh, I'm totally good. My son, I'll tell you, it took several years to kind of get the right math curriculum for him. We started out with a curriculum when he was in elementary school that I thought was good, and he was always, that was the one subject that he really struggles in. And lo and behold, his struggle turned into my struggle, because then I didn't want to go through the emotional turmoil of saying it's math time, and then all of a sudden there's like emotional breakdown. I don't want to do math, and come to find out that it was the way the page was designed that was making him confused. Because if you look at a math page, there's like all these questions are just like 20 questions on one page, and all of them could be very different, and there isn't enough space to work out the example. So you have to keep going back and forth. And then there's 500, I'm totally exaggerating, 500 other questions about previous work from previous pages.
Right.
So you have to remember the current lesson and then 5 lessons prior.
Yeah, they do like all the example problems
at
the. Yeah, no, I'm just explaining. They do like all the example problems at the end of like one chapter, and the one chapter covers like 7 or 8 different concepts. So yeah, I can definitely understand where his anxiety maybe came from that.
Like Nick said, we're engineers, and my worst subject was math in public school.
In high school, I had like C's and D's in math.
It's crazy. But let me tell you, when I finally found the right curriculum for him, the book that I found, it's called Matthew C. I even suggested this for the district, and they're not heeding my advice. But it's Matthew C. And Matthew C. it's structured a little differently. It's not like the traditional math textbooks or workbooks that we're used to. In Matthew C., they have a lesson for a particular skill, right? Let's say exponents.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have, instead of having one page of practice examples for that new lesson and 20 pages of review, they have 20 pages of practice for that lesson and 4 pages of review.
Right.
So by the end of that entire chapter, you've mastered the skill.
Right.
Practice
That's
makes perfect,
what we have to do in school. Not every child can learn math the same way. We need to be able to adopt 2 or 3 curriculum, textbooks, so that if a child like my son is sitting in, and I guarantee you there are children in math that are so confused just because of the formatting of the page that's in front of them.
Yeah, I would say I was one of those children, actually.
Me too, bro.
I went to a public school in Sebastian during elementary school, and then thankfully my parents sent me to a private school, Suncoast here in Vero Beach, for middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, that was a 360 for my learning. I went from probably a C student in elementary school, really not knowing what the hell was going on, to middle school math was like, wow, this is easy. This is, I'm ahead of what would be in high school once I get to a freshman. So I definitely, can relate to what you're saying about, it takes the time, and kind of what you stated is maybe a little bit more on the parent, or just kind of the parent trying to find the correct school, which can go back to what we were saying about school choice, but kind of a parent kind of putting just a little bit more time into kind of figuring out what their child needs, or kind of, or the teacher to figure out what's good for them so they can excel. So they're not, in the corner of their class just thinking they're a dumb idiot.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback off of what you just said, Jackie also mentioned the size of the school, and I also went to Suncoast because, like your son, a math problem like that would have exploded in my brain. And the size of the school made a huge difference, because now all of a sudden you have access to your teacher. She has time to work with you, and you're not in this class with 50 other kids who are just can't wait to do the next TikTok. It's like it's a much more focused thing. Anytime you expand something so big, you have to know that there's always going to be less attention on details. It's just what happens. The bigger the classroom, less attention on individual situations.
And not to mention the pressure that probably puts on, for example, the student that's not that great at math, and he's in a class of 30 kids, and maybe he feels like, shit, I'm the only one who doesn't get this. I can't ask a question. Everyone will think I'm stupid.
Exactly.
So, it just kind of goes back to that. And I think we can even kind of jump back and relate this into the whole kind of decentralization conversation that us four on the podcast have a lot, where if you have all these different schools running these different curriculums, then, you know, you can find the school that fits your child the best. And just to kind of reiterate what you were saying, how that creates competition, because now, you know, as it stands, public education, they don't really have anybody competing with them, so there's no incentive to do better because there's nobody to do better than. So,
yeah, or if they do have somebody competing with them, it's a private school, which now you have to pay out $1 to go to,
right?
On top of the taxes you're getting paid, which is something she already mentioned.
Yeah.
But if the money followed the child, then you wouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You're singing our song.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. With that, do you have anything that you want to promote, maybe where we can find you and see some more of the stuff that you're doing for our listeners if they want to check you out?
Yeah, I mean, if your listeners are voting and they have received their early ballots, their early voting ballots, which went out last week rather, I just want them to know that I am indeed the most experienced and the most qualified of all candidates for my seat, which is the District 2 seat as the incumbent candidate. I have a proven record of being the consistent voice of reason and common sense, I think. Yeah. A person who listens to her constituents, holds the superintendent and the board attorney accountable, even the board members, and including myself. I ask the tough questions, I research the truth, and provide really lawful direction when needed. And I don't compromise on my values. Other board members may compromise just to get a yes vote on some items that they might bring that might be before them. But I won't compromise on my values. That's one thing that I have learned in this position. I may compromise on some issues, on some things that are not, that might not be values-based, and not everything is about values. But when it comes to my values and the things that are that I am rooted in, where my belief system really holds strong, I won't budge. I have, opponents wanting to replace me on the board because of that, because of my conservative values, and it's important that people get out and vote. Make sure that your voice is heard, and just always remember to reach and teach every kid every day in every way. If anyone wants to find out more information, please visit my website at reelectjackie.com. It's reelectjackie.com.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, first off. And, this was a lot of fun. If you ever want to hop on the podcast and talk about specific topics or whatever, just reach out to us and we'll definitely set it up. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for having me. I'm excited.
Thank you, Jackie. We appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You too. Have a good night.